And speaking of calling, Cody, I kind of got two questions, kind of two for one right here. So when calling, what's that point that you see in that deer's reaction that, like, if you are calling at him, that kind of makes you either keep going or kind of like start just to kind of see or wait to see how he reacts, and also calling when calling at him like that. What makes you decide if you want to do like a rattle, a grunt, or even hit him with a snort wheeze?
I feel like on the question one, it comes to the manipulation side. If, in my personal opinion, if your tree stand setup is wide open around you and there's nothing to make that deer have to come look, then he's going to draw the line, kind of like a turkey. It's same kind of deal. Like for me, in the rut, if I go to and of course Jason's been a part of it because he's called me crazy several times. But if I go to a spot and I know it's rut and it's open, I, instead of necessarily hanging it on the X of exactly where I want, but if 40 yards from there's a big blowdown treetop, if I can put that stand by that treetop, then I know whenever I call to a deer, he's got to come all the way around that treetop to tell that nothing's there. And so, I think stands and if I would hang it in a different setup than early season or something like that. One of my favorites is hunt with Jason, and the X was probably 50 yards from us, but there was a big deep creek and it was kind of a bend, and I told Jason, I said, we're gonna hang it right here, and we started hanging the stand or whatever, and he's like, man, that we were talking about the X being further up. I said, well, any deer that cruises through here, when we call, they don't know if we're down in that creek on the other side, but they got to come to right here to be able to see that. And we killed first morning. First morning, shooter cruising across. We started calling and grunting. He turned around, got his attention. I gave a couple soft grunts just to make sure he knew where it was, and he never stopped walking until he got to 12 steps. And he was just coming right around that bend to see the other side. But, I feel like that plays a huge part. And then as far as reading them, and like I said, I'm no expert by no means, but as far as reading them, that first initial connection, I feel like once you kind of understand that, you're going to see a difference. That deer's going to stop. A lot of times they'll go ahead and quarter to, like I'm trying to pinpoint it. You'll see their ears lock in on you. And usually then I'm trying to give a couple more soft grunts. I'm making him really fine-tune where he's coming. And once he starts coming, I'm going to let him come. I'm not going to keep grunting in his face. But then it kind of comes to the turkey hunt. A lot of times you'll kind of read him. If he starts fading off, and you kind of feel like you need to walk him back maybe one or two more, and he'll stop and look again. And then it's either pretty much going to happen or it's not at that point. But as far as rattling, I've done a lot of blind rattling, and I've never, honestly, I can't name. I've seen it work. I saw Chris in Iowa. He blind rattled sitting in the tree, 150-inch deer comes down the hill, power scraping, and just walks right to him. But I've never personally had that happen. A lot of people rattle up a lot of deer. But I haven't had huge luck on it. But where I have had luck is rattling on a windy day when I can't get him to hear the grunt call. A deer 250 yards, 15, 20 mile an hour north wind. And, I'm obviously the deer's upwind of us and trying to get a grunt call and get him to hear it. And if he couldn't, a lot of times I'll hit the horns together, give it a quick little rattle, and then that usually a stop him. That's the connection. And then start grunting and call him in that way. So I've used horns a lot in that fashion with a little bit windier conditions just to be able to get him to stop so he could fine-tune on the grunt call. But roundabout answer, but that would be my answer to it.
So have you ever used the snort wheeze, or is that just kind of like if you're trying to get them to turn real quick when they're going certain direction or something?
Yep, a lot of times I snort wheeze is very effective. I feel like I tend, just sitting here thinking through a setup, I kind of feel like a lot of times I use the snort wheeze. If that doesn't work, if he stops and then he starts going again, maybe stop him one more time and then snort wheeze at him. And then I've seen that work a lot too. Anytime I rattle, I always use, a snort wheeze and that kind of deal, I guess, adding realism. But it's, I can definitely, sitting here thinking through it, I feel like I've used the snort wheeze when the first didn't happen. If I know he heard the grunts and he's still either looking at a doe, but it's very effective. I do use snort wheeze a lot.
Is there a point in the rut where you're gonna lay off the calling because they might be locked down with those? If you're let's say lay off the blind rattling and stuff. How about that? Because if you're blind calling, you don't know that deer could be in the air, but you don't know if he's got a doe with him or not. I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes it could have the opposite effect. You have no idea.
Yeah, it could. I mean, definitely doe takes him the other way or whatever the case. But I don't know. I feel like I've kind of always just stuck to that same routine, good or bad. If I see one, even if he's got a doe. Now, I do think the snort wheeze could work way more effectively if he's, say that doe walks into 80 yards and he's still just staring at her. And if you've got the right setup where he can't see around something or what, and you snort wheeze, he's not going to want another buck in there close. And I do think a lot of times that could make him break off of that doe just to come circle in to make sure there's not another buck or keep him pushed off. And sometimes that bubbles inside, bow range.
All I can say is after talking with a couple of these guys and hearing some stuff, it makes a lot of sense why that buck that drop tine buck I had, when I grunted at him, he came in and he didn't cross that creek. He stopped on the other side of that opening and looked down in that bottom where I grunted at to see if that buck was down there. He knew exactly where that sound came from. He was like, I don't have to go over there if there ain't nothing when I walk through this little clearing. It makes a lot of more sense.
It is incredible at how well they can pinpoint calling. Like it blows my mind. Like you could sit there and be grunting 10 times and he hadn't paid attention to it. And all of a sudden when he does hear it, I mean, within one or two grunts, a lot of times you'll never hit the grunt call again and you shoot him at 12 steps. And it's that quick. He knew exactly where it was. And in his mind, I feel like on a when the deer commits to it, he heard it, and you've got that treetop there, you've got the creek or the bend or the thicket right there to the left or right or whatever the case may be. But in his mind, he immediately goes to that buck's behind that treetop. And so it's amazing, always has been amazing how fast they can pinpoint it. When you do make your a connection with them and they heard it. But it's fun. I will, Jason, all of them know it, man. If I can, God, there is nothing better than a deer that was not coming to the X you're sitting on, and all of a sudden you totally reroute and call him in. It is incredible. Ain't looking